This boy tried to overcome magic. In this world, mages reign supreme, while those without magic are rejected. Oscar, even though he was a genius sword saint, never awakened magic, but he was reborn years into the past, back when he was just a boy. And now, as a military genius, he enters the academy and crushes all the students. Flying over the burning city, a great monster spreads destruction everywhere. Amidst the flames, people run desperately, trying to save their own lives. Watching the creature, a mage and a warrior prepare to face the threat. Focusing his energy, the mage uses his staff to summon magic circles. With his preparation complete, he positions himself to unleash a great power. Then, several strikes are launched at the creature as it flies toward them. Even while taking the hits, the monster continues to charge at them with fury. The magic explodes with full force, but it seems to have no effect on it. From a distance, the other mages watch, realizing the attack has failed. The creature then dives swiftly, preparing for a counterattack. As the warrior charges forward, he strikes a direct blow against the monster's body. His blade, however, shatters upon impact with the tough scales. Realizing his failure, he is startled by the creature's incredible resilience. Without wasting time, the monster retaliates with a strike right in front of him. He is hit head-on, sent flying by the impact. Seeing the fallen warrior, the young man panics at the desperate situation, but at that moment, a skilled swordsman appears to face the creature. With his support team, he readies himself for battle against the monster. Leaping from below, he lands a precise strike right on the target's chest. Struck squarely, the creature recoils, letting out a massive roar. Reflected in the monster's eye, his precise attack hits a vital point. Landing safely, he watches the creature's shadow dissolve. After the battle, he simply turns and sheathes his sword. Revealing his identity, he is Oscar, known as the Sword Saint. Surrounded by the survivors, they thank him for saving them. He then tells them he'll leave the rest of the work to them. Ignoring their calls, he simply turns and starts to walk away. Passing by a father and son, he remembers a moment from his past. In a memory, a little girl says that what she's seeing is very beautiful. A man then explains to her that it's what they call magic. With a wand, he created various particles that floated in the air. Despite everything, he still had a somewhat distant and thoughtful look. Seeing his strength, a family watched him with great admiration for his deeds. In his memory, a little girl gazed in awe at that same spectacle, just like himself, who also watched everything with a huge smile. Even though he was strong, he still carried the same desire he had for magic. As a child, he could even create small spells with his own hands. Changing scenes in a mountainous region, he began his daily training. Holding a wooden sword, he prepared for another repetition. Swinging the sword, he moved it with full force, cutting through the air. From a distance, two young people watched their master training alone in the middle of a field. Curious, she asks if he trains every day, and the young man confirms. Over the years, his feet have sunk into the ground in that very spot. He explains that the continuous training ended up forming that huge crater. Ignoring them, the master just turns and raises his sword. The student watches him with a surprised expression on her face. He then asks what the scroll is that she's holding. She then remembers the message and immediately shouts for her master. Running towards him, she tells him a letter has arrived from the capital. As he reads the letter, he sees his student ask if it's bad news. He says it's a medal, and complains that they should have checked his schedule. Laughing, she says that with his achievements, he could have a high-ranking position. Complaining about factions, he says he wouldn't be able to train well in a place like that. The student then comments that he must really love the sword. Looking to the side, he seems to reflect on what she just said. With a slight smile, he says it's not like he enjoys it that much. Revealing his past, he says he chose the sword on his father's orders. Completely surprised, the student is speechless upon hearing that revelation. He confirms that he didn't choose the path of the swordsman of his own free will. Looking at her, he says he envies her for having a talent for the sword. She says she joined the academy of her own volition, but now she's scared. Clutching her clothes, she shows she's very nervous about the situation. It's explained that mages and swordsmen use different circuits for their power. Mixing the two different energies causes a total collapse in the user's body. For this reason, the choice between the two paths defines your entire life. Placing a hand on her shoulder, he tries to calm his young apprentice. He then advises that if she's worried, she should just swing her sword. With a smile, she replies that she understands and thanks her master for the advice. Later, lying in his bed, the master rests alone in his room. He then thinks that he has no right to say that to his disciple. Remembering her words, he recalls that she envies him for his talent. Looking at his own hand, he wonders what it would be like to have a talent for magic. He then repeats the advice he gave, telling himself to just swing the sword. Suddenly, he senses something strange and opens his eyes, looking to the side. Outside the house, a huge explosion suddenly occurs. Watching the burning house, a group of cloaked mages watches from a distance. Leading the group, one of them holds a staff, ready for battle. As they talk, one mage asks if they got him, but another tells him not to let his guard down. Leaping from the rubble, the master suddenly appears, surprising one of the mages. Running toward the enemies, he realizes they are very powerful mages. He then tries to identify which of them is the leader of the mysterious group. Giving the order, the leader commands all the other mages to prepare their attack. Holding his sword, the master prepares to face all the enemies there. Dodging the blows, he leaps over the attacks to counterattack. Getting close, he lands a direct hit on one of the cloaked mages. Then he notices something, and his face fills with surprise and worry. Taking the student hostage, the leader threatens him, ordering him to lower his sword. Tied up and gagged, the girl is terrified of being held hostage. He asks what their objective is, and the leader replies that it's his life. Confused, he says he doesn't remember doing anything to be so hated. With a smile, the leader says he figured he wouldn't remember. Another mage says they cannot forgive his existence with so much talent. Not understanding at all, he asks what they were talking about. The leader says he doesn't need to understand, since he's going to die there. He then looks toward his student, who is still a hostage, shouting. The student tells her master not to worry about her life. Hearing that, he looks at her with an expression of pure determination. Holding his sword, he says he finally understands the whole situation. Surprised by the change, the leader of the mages doesn't understand what's happening. He warns that their plan has failed and that they shouldn't have underestimated his disciple. The mage holding her hostage panics at the situation. Standing still, he turns his back as the ice strikes fly toward him. At high speed, the ice strikes race to hit him head-on. After the impact, a large cloud of smoke rises from the spot. Initially confident, the leader is startled to see what has happened. Impressed, the leader comments on the girl's courage for taking such a risk. With his body pierced, the master protects her, saying that's how swordsmen are. Seeing her master gravely wounded, the student runs desperately to him. Believing they've won, the mages leave, talking about his wasted talent. She then asks why he did that, getting so hurt for her sake. With a smile, he replies that he's a swordsman too, just like her. Crying, she says she was also prepared to die during that battle. She blames herself, but he tells her it wasn't her fault. Unable to accept it, the student keeps crying while holding her master. With his last bit of strength, he tries to say something but can't. In his mind, he regrets not having become a mage to protect her. He then admits that all this time, he had always wanted to use magic. To run from the truth, he just kept swinging his sword non-stop. Despite all the admiration, he never forgot his true dream. Nothing compared to the happiness he felt when he saw magic as a child. Extending his hand toward the sky, he finds himself in an unknown place. He then gets up, looking at his hand, completely confused by the situation. Placing a hand on his head, he realizes he should have died. Sitting, he looks around and wonders where he is. Seeing the landscape, he recognizes it as his old childhood village. Remembering his death, he's confused about still being alive in this place. Next to his sword, he finds a letter and wonders what it is. Opening the letter, he's completely surprised by what's written inside. Holding the invitations, he sees they're from the two biggest academies in the kingdom. At 15, every young person receives an invitation to either the Academy of Magic or swordsmanship. After choosing, the candidate must take the letter to the academy's gate. With the letter in hand, he notices his reflection in front of him. Questioning himself, he begins to wonder if he has really returned to the past. He then realizes he's back at 14, before he became a swordsman. When someone approaches, he just stays crouched, looking at the ground. Appearing, his father asks what he's doing there alone, calling his name. Startled, he quickly stands up, exclaiming that it's his father. Seeing his father and the others, he realizes that if he's back, his father is alive. His father says he looks arrogant and has been neglecting his training. Just looking at the horizon, the boy remains silent, saying nothing. Back then, all he thought about was how to tell his father about his desire for magic. Being a swordmaster, his father was responsible for training many disciples. As his son, he naturally began to learn the way of the sword as well. In a memory, he runs excitedly, saying someone showed him magic earlier. With great joy, he described how radiant and beautiful magic seemed to be. With a serious expression, his father would say that magic was a technique for the weak. Grabbing his shoulders, he orders that as his son, he would use the sword. Unable to abandon the sword, he continued to train, even while wishing to use magic. Back in the present, he stands up and faces his future with determination. Gripping the sword tightly, he thinks that he's had enough of that ending. Determined, he affirms that in this life, he will follow the path he truly wants to follow. His father then asks again why he was neglecting his training. Turning his face away, he replies that he has already spent a lifetime with the sword. Surprised by the answer, his father just stares at him in silence. Unleashing his power, he summons several energy swords around him. One of his men feels the pressure, forced back by the power. The other two are thrown to the ground, unable to withstand the force he released. Even with all that power, the boy remains still, facing his father. Amazed, One of the men wonders how he can be so calm. Ignoring the pressure, he stands firm, looking at his father without backing down. His father watches him, realizing his son wasn't just playing around. Dispelling the technique, he says it seems he wasn't just messing around. Approaching, he places a hand on his son's shoulder, acknowledging his strength. He then says that one day he will be able to entrust his guild to him. Seeing this, the other men look at the young boy with envy. With a faint smile, his father turns and starts to walk away. Thinking about his father, he stands there, reflecting on that moment. Running towards him, he hugs his father from behind with all his might. Two men surround him, saying they were eager to see him again. With a smile, one of them offers to give him a little sword lesson. Remembering the past, he realizes those guys were there before too. They were his training partners, whom he always fought at his father's request. But after they awakened their energy, they always left him aside. Taking the opportunity, they would take out their frustrations on him, pretending to teach him. Back in the present, he prepares for combat against that same man. Telling him to hurry, the man channels his energy into the wooden sword. The presence of that energy created a power gap his technique couldn't overcome. Ignoring the challenge, he turns and starts walking towards the river. Holding his sword, he's thankful for everything that has happened so far. Seeing this, the man is completely shocked, not understanding his strange behavior. Throwing the sword into the water, he surprises his rival, who stumbles at the move. Calling him a coward, the others shout, asking if he plans to run from the fight. Furious, the man calls him a disgrace, preparing to strike. With his back to all of them, he faces the horizon, completely ignoring their taunts. With a smile, he says he will be a mage and will no longer use the sword. Shouting that he won't go easy, he charges forward with his wooden sword. Watching the attack, he analyzes the movements of his former training partner. His rival used sword energy to strengthen his entire body, but with a barrier, he easily blocks the blow, shocking his opponent. He then says that it's not enough to defeat him. Furious, the rival grinds his teeth, refusing to accept the direct provocation. Attacking with fury, he tries to land several blows but misses every one. He then realizes he's fallen into the old habit of fighting like it's just a training session. Outraged, he shouts, asking why he can't land a single hit. Extending his hand, he prepares to end the fight once and for all. With a swift move, he easily disarms his opponent. Stepping on the sword, he lands a blow that knocks his rival to the ground. On the ground, the rival furiously yells, calling him a bastard. Standing before him, he prepares to deliver the final blow. He then asks why he would throw away his advantage against a disarmed opponent. Looking back, he sees the others holding back the furious rival. After a moment of thought, he figures this will keep his rival away for a while. Remembering the past, he recalls how his father forcefully awakened his energy. To avoid the same mistake, he decides he will master magic first. Continuing on his way, he walks alone on a road through the forest. Wiping away his sweat, he looks around to make sure no one is there. Stopping in front of a rock, he believes no one will be able to see him. In a memory, a mage asks him how magic is used. He explains that swordsmen refine energy to enhance their bodies or their blades. Paying close attention, the mage listens to his explanation with curiosity. Sitting beside a garden, she then prepares to give an example. She then picks up a watering can that was on the ground next to her. She says that for them, using magic is like watering plants with a watering can. Not understanding, he asks what she meant by that. She explains that mana circulates through circuits and is poured into a magical formula. With a spell activated, the flowers around her begin to bloom. Back in the present, he sits on a rock to meditate in peace. Remembering the mage, he recalls that mana fills all the air around him. Sitting on the rock, he looks at the sky, trying to concentrate on nature. Closing his eyes, he believes he can draw in the mana with his heightened senses. After all, as a swordsman, he trained all 5 of his senses to their limit. So he closes his eyes, preparing to feel the flow of mana. Able to feel the flow of nature, he senses the birds, the water, and the fish. Opening one eye, he seems to have finally perceived something. Just then, the mana becomes visible, flowing throughout the forest around him. Wide-eyed, he's shocked to finally see the magical energy. Celebrating, he says that he did it and now he needs to absorb it all. But he realizes he has no idea how to do that. Hearing a noise, he quickly turns in the direction of the sound. Diving to the ground, he sees something hit the rock right beside him. Sensing the mana, he feels that something is very strange about this place. Getting up, he decides to walk toward the mysterious energy he felt. Moving through the forest, he gets closer and closer to the source of the power. He then realizes he can't sense the presence of any living being, but suddenly, he throws himself to the ground to dodge an attack. As dust kicks up, he's startled by the force of the unexpected attack. Looking ahead, he finds himself facing a huge stone golem. He then wonders why something like that would be in such an isolated place. Just then, he notices someone else falling from the sky right in front of him. A woman then lands on the golem's head, staring him down. Waving, she asks what he's doing in her private workshop. With a threatening look, she asks if he's after her research. She then warns him to think carefully before he opens his mouth. Standing before him, the mysterious woman watches him with great suspicion. Remembering the rumors, he recalls a heroine from the frozen north. Able to command a golem, she alone was worth an army of soldiers. Known as the Creation Mage, her name was the fearsome Isabel. Now in chains, he never imagined he'd meet her in a situation like this. Sitting on her throne, she demands to know which faction he belongs to immediately. Then she points her staff, preparing to use magic against him. A large magic circle forms on the ground, trapping him completely in place. Desperate, he yells for her to wait, trying to stop the attack. He says he didn't resist capture because he's not her enemy. She seems to consider his words before making her decision. Standing up, she prepares a spell and bids farewell to the nameless mage. Screaming, he warns her that he's not even a real mage. Surprised by the revelation, she stops her attack and stares at the chained boy. With a smirk, she says that's a pretty pathetic excuse to use. Placing a hand on his head, she begins to use an unknown magic. Her eye glowing, she's surprised by what she just discovered. She then realizes there's no mana flowing through his circuits. Now in a room, she says she finally understands his situation. Sipping a cup of tea, she informs him that she doesn't plan to apologize. She then complains that she's already a target for everyone around her. Surprised, he asks if she's really a professor at the Magic Academy. He thinks this is his chance to learn from her at the academy. Taking another sip, she glares at him with a look of pure contempt. Standing up, he prepares to make a very important request. Filled with hope, he asks her to teach him how to manifest mana. Coldly, she refuses, saying she has no interest in talentless losers. She then tells him to finish his drink and just leave. Remembering his death, he refuses to accept that fate once again. He refuses to back down no matter what. Ignoring her order, he simply asks if he can have another cup of tea. He then thinks he needs to find a way to convince her to help him.
Using his special vision, he's able to analyze the mana around him. He then notices a flaw in the energy flow inside her golem. Pointing at the golem, he warns that the creature is acting strangely. Suddenly, the golem starts to shake and loses control of the teapot. The golem then hits her on the head, spilling all the hot liquid. Worried, he stands up and shouts her name, rushing to help. He explains that the circuits in the golem's right shoulder seem to be clogged.
The energy in the golem's shoulder begins to fail, confirming what he said. Impressed, she wonders how he knew her golem was malfunctioning. Grabbing his arm tightly, she demands to know how he found out. She then asks how he knew the golem's shoulder was broken. He replies that the golem's mana flow seemed completely abnormal to him. She then remembers being told that mana is invisible. Looking at her, he simply confirms that he can see the flow of mana. She says she now understands how he broke her barrier so easily. She then wonders if it was because of his experience as a swordsman. Remembering her enemy, she understands he also had the same kind of talent. She then realizes this was the talent her enemy envied so much. Calling his name, she then faces him with a new expression. With a smile, she finally agrees to teach him how to use mana. Surprised, he says she had just told him she wouldn't help. Extending her hand, she says that he has now piqued her interest. Happy with her answer, he accepts the proposal with a big smile. Shaking hands, they finally seal the deal for his training. Explaining the lesson, she says that mana is already absorbed naturally by the body. He then asks what he needs to do to make the mana flow through the circuits. She shows that mana only flows when a magic formula is used. Not understanding the drawing, he asks what that strange formula is. Showing him a scroll, she says it's a spell given to academy freshmen. Excited, he asks what kind of magic it is, but she says it's a surprise. She instructs him to feel the power circulating and pour it into the magic formula. With a big smile, he says he'll try with all his might. She then thinks that this task usually takes at least a month to complete, but she considers that if his talent is real, things could be different. Maybe he could do it all in just half a month of training. Remembering her words, he prepares to feel the power inside him. He understands it's like refining his energy, needing only to focus inward. Closing his eyes, he begins to concentrate so he can feel the energy. Deep inside, he strives to find the mana within himself. With a slight smile, he finally finds what he was looking for. Placing his hand on the scroll, a purple magic circle begins to form. Opening his eyes, he realizes she was right all along. Looking at the scroll, he sees that the mana was right there. Mastering mana is like learning to walk with a new pair of legs. No one is born knowing how to walk. You have to fall and get back up to find your footing. Completely shocked, she stands there, watching what just happened. Even the greatest mages in the world take time to learn how to use mana. Looking up at the sky, he observes the various energy particles he just created. Approaching slowly, she still can't seem to believe what she's seeing. She thinks it's unbelievable that he mastered it on his first try. Remembering their conversation, she recalls the answer he gave about the golem. Then she wonders if it's just because he can see mana. But whatever the reason, She's certain about one thing with that boy. One thing was for sure, he possessed a truly impressive talent for magic. Observing the result, he finally understands that this was true magic. With a big smile, she calls out to him, saying what he did was incredible. Slapping him on the back, she can hardly believe he did it on the first try. He then says that it's not good enough, leaving her confused. Looking at the magic, he says it doesn't look very beautiful. Remembering the past, he recalls the beauty of the magic he saw as a child. That smile on his face was proof of his pure admiration for magic. He then says that magic is something special and beautiful, but this one seemed different. Pointing to the scroll, he says the spell doesn't seem right somehow. He says that just like the golem, the mana flow of that spell is strange. Turning to her, he asks what she thinks, surprising the young woman. He then finally understands what he truly wants for his future. With a clenched fist, he says he doesn't want to just become a simple mage. With a shout, he declares that he wants to cast magic that is perfect and beautiful. She then replies that if he found something strange, he should have rewritten it. Surprised by her answer, he approaches her with newfound excitement. He then asks how he can draw the magical formulas for spells. Elsewhere, his father walks alone down a long castle corridor. He seems thoughtful, recalling some event from his past. Fallen on the ground, the rivals wonder how he managed to get so strong. Approaching, his father asks what happened there. Trying to cover it up, they say it was nothing serious, just training. With a serious look, he demands to know exactly what happened there. Afraid, they prepare to tell the master the whole truth. A man approaches and begins to explain the whole situation to him. After hearing the story, he remains silent, just watching the man. He then says he finds it hard to believe that Oscar defeated all of them. He then orders them to take care of their injuries, so it won't affect tomorrow's training. Bowing, the man agrees, and says he understood all of his orders. Observing the horizon, the father believes the right time has finally come. With a smile, he says it's time to bestow the sword's energy. Elsewhere, a library is filled with books and research items. He says he didn't know magical formulas were so profound. She then offers to lend him some books so he can learn even more. With a smile, she confirms, saying all her knowledge is in there. Looking for him, she realizes the boy suddenly vanished from in front of her. He then reappears with a pile of books, saying he'll take them all. She asks if he's going to take everything, and he reminds her that she authorized it. Calling out to him, she prepares to give him a very important warning. She says she needs to warn him about something, even if it spoils his excitement. Now that he has housed mana in his body, he has officially become a mage. She then warns him that he needs to be very careful when handling the sword. As she speaks, an image of his father appears in a quick flashback. She finishes the warning by saying that if he's not careful, he'll end up dead. Back in Eisen Village, he watches everything from a distance, mounted on his horse. Having returned, he wears a serious and tired look on his face. Inside a room, his sick father says it's been a long time. Stopping in front of the bed, he hears his father finally recognize him. He then kneels beside his father, who extends his hand. In a memory, his father touches him, saying he truly had talent. He also says that forcing him to give up magic was not a mistake. That memory left him with a great pain in his own chest. His father forced him to follow the path of the sword against his will. Holding the registration letter, he now has a new chance to choose. In front of the gates, he prepares to finally enter the Magic Academy. Thinking of his father, he vows that this time he will enroll in magic. Elsewhere, a mysterious man stands watching the fire burn. Seeing the boy arrive, he asks if he has some business to discuss. With a determined look, he announces that he's come to get his registration signed. Standing face to face, they stare at each other in tense silence. He says that can wait, but the boy refuses to postpone it. With an angry look, he seems to dislike the young man's attitude. The boy then says he can't wait, as he needs his father's signature. Asking for a reason, he questions why he decided to follow the path of magic. He then reminds him of the conversation they had when he wanted to use magic. Ignoring the question, he just holds the pen, preparing to sign. Pointing at him, his father says that it was nothing but foolishness. He then questions him if it really was just simple foolishness. Lowering his head, he agrees, saying that to him, it really was just that. When the man touches him, a great magical energy is released. Shocked by the power, he yells, asking what kind of joke this was. He then asks if the boy has already managed to fully master mana. With a smile, he says he didn't think he'd be able to persuade his father. Angrily, his father asks what he is trying to persuade him about. He says that defeating swordsmen without a sword shows the extent of his talent. The boy replies that he is aware of his own full potential. Angrily, his father shouts that he isn't aware of anything. He says that success is guaranteed for him if he becomes a swordsman. The boy then says his assessment is correct, but that he disagrees. He says that success doesn't necessarily bring people happiness. Facing each other, they prepare for a clash of ideals. Putting a hand to his face, He says he understands and that it makes sense. The boy just watches him, waiting for his reaction to those words. With a dark look, he says he can still fix this situation. He then asks if the boy wants to die, making him afraid. If the boy insists on the wrong path, he will make him come to his senses. Drawing his sword, he says he'll make him see reason. He warns that even if he doesn't accept it now, one day he will thank him. With a determined look, he replies, "That day will never come, father." That day truly never came for him in his past life. Pointing the sword, his father tells him to grab his own weapon. He says he'll give him at least that much time to prepare. Closing his eyes, he concentrates for the coming fight. Opening his eyes, he faces him with a look of pure determination. Holding the letter, he reminds him that he is now a mage, not a swordsman. The letter from the Magic Academy was proof of his new choice. He then throws the letter into the pyre, burning the paper completely. Surprised and angry, his father doesn't understand what he's doing. With a challenge, he says, "Let's see if you can take this from me." Walking, he tells the boy to try his luck and see what happens. He warns him not to get cocky just because he withstood his energy, but with a swift strike, his father stops the blade near his neck. He thinks he can read the attacks as if he were holding the sword himself. Since childhood, he has always carefully watched his father's every move. The reflection in his eyes showed that he had learned everything he could from him. Unleashing a flurry of blows, his father creates an attack that covers the entire area, but the boy dodges every strike with great ease. He then reveals that the person he looked up to the most was his father. Stepping back, his father says he truly lives up to his words. He also praises him for dodging so well, even without using his energy. He then says his talent with the sword is truly genuine. Offering his energy, he tells the boy to accept his power. The boy then remembers it was his father who said he would make him surrender. With a smile, he asks if his father wants him to yield. Angrily, his father calls him a fool, not believing his attitude. He then says that, like his talent, there are things he refuses to yield. Holding a quill, he shows that he won't give in to his father. His father asks if he intends to use that as a real sword. He then reveals that it's a magic staff for beginners like him. Remembering Isabel, he says that knowledge is necessary for magic, and just like him, his father also has no knowledge of magic. Holding the quill, he readies himself, as his father doesn't know what's coming. His father could never predict what his next move in combat would be. Lunging forward with a strike, he attacks the boy with all his might. Using his special vision, he can predict all of his father's attacks. He then summons several copies to protect himself from his father's blow. Dodging the attack, he manages to escape unharmed, with a slight smile. Appearing behind him, he takes him by surprise, preparing to counterattack. He then stops his father's blade, showing his vast superiority. Holding the quill, he prepares to use the magic he has always dreamed of. He then uses mana to draw a magical formula from his knowledge. Remembering his childhood, he recalls the first magic he ever saw, the magic he had dreamed of countless times over all those years. With a spark spell, he prepares to fulfill his wish. In a memory, his sick mother sat in a rocking chair. Shocked by the spell, his father is speechless, just watching the sparks. The spark spell hits his father, creating a small burst of light. He then wonders what kind of magic that was. Charging at him, the boy prepares for his final attack. Angrily, he asks if that magic was just a simple distraction. Tossing his father into the air, he shows it was no distraction. Landing on the ground, he stops right beside his father's sword. The reflection on the blade shows the boy with the quill pointed at his father. He then says he knew his father would attack based on his presence. He asks if the goal was to take his sword with the distraction. The boy says that hiding his objective was something he learned from him. With a hand on his face, he seems frustrated with the whole situation. He then says he can guarantee his talent, but there are no guarantees in magic. Standing face to face, they stare at each other in silence. With a smile, he says he merely demonstrated the path he wishes to follow. He then asks if his father became a swordsman because his talent was guaranteed. Remembering the past, his father seems to recall an old conversation. A man wonders if his son should follow the path of the sword. Sitting next to his wife, he says their son has a talent for the sword. She then reminds him that he only started fighting because he thought it was cool. With a smile, she says they don't need to choose, as he will decide for himself. With a faint smile, he says he thought his son would become a sword saint. Happy with the answer, the boy watches him with a hopeful gaze. But his father turns and starts to walk away, leaving the boy confused. Signing the application, his father finally accepts the path he has chosen. Surprised, the boy just stares at him, not understanding his sudden change of heart. With a smile, he says he can't sign with that magic quill. Changing scenes, the Magic Academy prepares to welcome the new students. Reading a file, a man says the new students are exceptional. A woman says the princess and other nobles are enrolling in the academy. With a smile, a young man says they have already mastered hereditary magics. Another mysterious man holds a file, not revealing his identity to the others. An instructor asks if there's anything wrong with the new students. The mysterious man says they are worthy of the Saint class lineage. Elsewhere, the boy studies magic, using the quill as a pen. In front of the dormitory, his father waited for him with a faint smile. He turned to face him, a proud look in his eyes. After 6 months, the day to go to the academy had finally arrived. Walking with a smile, he says that time flew by in the blink of an eye. His father reminds him that many others have also been refining their magic during this time. He then advises him to stay strong, as this was the path he chose. With a confident look, he promises his father he'll be fine. With a smile, he says there's no one scarier than his father. His father then smiles, understanding that the boy is ready for his future. Saying his goodbyes, his father says he's leaving and walks away. Holding the letter, he thinks that he can finally go to the academy. Walking past other students, he finally reaches his long-awaited destination. He's finally going to the magic academy he's always dreamed of. Opening the gates, he prepares to enter a new world of magic. Behind the gates, a huge, beautiful castle appears before him. Several mages are casting spells to celebrate the arrival of the new students. Magical gnomes play their instruments, creating a grand welcoming party. Other students fly by on their brooms at high speed. With a smile, he says the atmosphere is very different from the Sword Academy. With their instruments, the gnomes continue to play their music for the new students. Crouching down, he wonders what the difference is between gnomes and golems. Remembering his registration, he stands up so he won't be late for the procedure. But suddenly, he finds Isabel standing right in front of him. Running up to her, he says he hopes she hasn't been slacking off these past few months. With a smile, she tells him to surprise her again with his talent. Pointing down the street, he asks where all the other academy students are. She explains that the selection exam for the first class is happening right there. The students are divided into 2 classes, based on whether they have mana or not. Above those 2, there's a special class for the most talented of all. The exam is a way to separate the most talented students from the others. She advises him to avoid the exam, but he asks why. She explains that the students who pass the exam are all powerful monsters. They are the elite, who grew up surrounded by magic since childhood. With a smile, he says that means he can learn advanced magic. With her hand on her head, she says it's useless to try and convince him. She then invites him to see the exam with his own eyes. In an arena, 2 students face off in an exhibition match. One of the students uses water magic to defend against the attack. The wave of water surges forward, showing the strength of the student's magic. With a smile, the student celebrates landing a successful attack. Watching the fight, he realizes the exam involves hitting a target with magic, but suddenly, he gets the feeling he's being watched. Turning around, he sees a man with white hair calling him over. The man calls him a commoner, saying he has no right to be there. With a look of anger, he tells the boy to leave immediately. He replies that he heard any new student could be accepted into the academy. With disdain, the man says he certainly has a silver tongue. He finally understands what Isabel meant about the students being monsters. He then realizes that no one who isn't a noble is welcome in that class. Shoving the boy, he says he's next and tells him to watch. A woman with a staff prepares to start the next round. Watching from afar, he prepares to display all of his magical power. He says the first class is for those who have dedicated everything to magic. Casting an ice spell, he chants, "Freeze all of existence." Enormous pillars of ice erupt, showcasing his incredible magical power. The people in the audience are shocked by the strength of the ice magic. The boy is also stunned by what he just witnessed. Impressed, they comment that this is to be expected from House Golosis. Others wonder if he used all his power in that single strike. He then says that now he understands this place isn't for him. He admits that the noble's magic is impressive and that he dedicated everything to it, but with a slight smile, he says it's all a huge waste. Angrily, the noble asks what he just said about his magic. Ignoring the taunt, he just turns and gets ready to leave. He then thinks that he understands the weight of effort and time very well. With a smile, he says he's gained some confidence and thanks the noble. The people in the crowd laugh, saying he's using a pen for a wand. They then say there's no way he can hit anything with that thing. The noble says his magic should have been perfect, without a single flaw. Standing in front of the ice, the boy prepares to take his turn. He says his house specializes in ice, so there shouldn't be any flaws, but he wonders why he's taking that commoner boy seriously. The instructor prepares to start the next challenger's attempt. She says this year's batch is great, just as the rumors suggested. She's impressed with Zazan, who's already tipped to be the representative. But even so, she feels like something different is about to happen. She then wonders what the boy has been doing all this time. In the crowd, a man yells, telling him to give up if he can't hit it. The instructor notices he's waiting for something, and he isn't anxious. Using his special vision, he analyzes the ice magic in front of him. He can see all the flaws in the structure of the huge ice pillars. Holding the quill, he prepares to show his true magical ability. The instructor is shocked to see what he's about to do. Using a magic formula, he prepares to cast a fire spell. He then casts the spell, hitting all the targets with precision. The targets fall to the ground, showing they were all hit by the spell. The instructor is shocked, wondering what just happened. People comment that he used basic magic, but still hit the targets. They also say that if he's at the academy, he should use better spells. With a slight smile, he turns away, ignoring the crowd's comments. The noble wondered what kind of magic he would use in the exam. Lying on the ground, he says it was all a big waste of time. The boy then asks the instructor if he failed the exam. With a shout, she says he hit 5 targets and passed without any problems. Confused, he doesn't understand why she's so surprised by the result. He then asks why she's so shocked by his performance. She asks why he didn't aim one by one if he was able to. Angrily, she tells him not to say it was all just pure luck. With a hand on his chin, he thinks the noble's magic was incredible. He remembers the ice spell, which was truly impressive to see. He then explains that it's a waste to use so much mana on one spell. Confused, she wonders what he means by a waste of mana. He says he assumed the exam was practical and thought of it as a battlefield. Hearing his explanation, she falls silent, just watching the boy. She then apologizes for interrupting him and says she understands now. Walking through the city, he remembers what just happened in the exam. The instructor thinks about the vision, courage, and mana control he demonstrated. She thinks that more than anyone, he understands the true essence of magic. He proved to be a mage with far greater potential than anyone else there. Walking alone, he reflects on his first day at the Magic Academy. He can't believe he met such an incredible mage right off the bat. Walking alone, he notices someone is watching him closely. He stops walking and turns to see who the mysterious person is. With a serious look, he asks who's there, telling them to reveal themselves. A voice then praises his sharp eyes for noticing them so quickly. With a staff in hand, the person says it's a pleasure to meet him. Revealing himself, the man says his name is Balsamus, the academy's headmaster. Bowing, he apologizes for his rudeness, but the headmaster calms him down. Surprised by his identity, the boy is speechless for a moment. But suddenly he notices something strange, and his eyes go wide. He recognizes the necklace the headmaster is wearing as the one from the mysterious mage. Reaching out, he asks if there's something wrong with him. Hesitating for a moment, he gets ready to greet the academy's headmaster, but as he touches him, he gets a vision of the headmaster with a pained expression. Shocked by the vision, he quickly backs away, startled by what he saw. A powerful gust of wind throws him back, showcasing the headmaster's magical strength. He's then thrown onto the roof of a house. Landing safely, the headmaster praises him for dodging, questioning his sharp perception. Floating in the air, he wonders if the boy's intuition is really that strong. With the quill in his hand, he asks if the headmaster came here to kill him. The headmaster asks if he really thinks he can win with that. With a swing of his staff, he casts a powerful wind spell. A prison of wind forms, surrounding the boy on all sides. He then realizes it's a wind barrier and there's no way out. Realizing there's no escape, he prepares to use a fire spell. Using a magic formula, he launches a fireball at the headmaster. The spell surges forward, about to hit the headmaster dead on in the air. Hovering in the air, the headmaster watches the fire attack approach him, but with his staff, he deflects the spell with incredible ease. The boy braces for a counterattack, but the headmaster just watches him. He then realizes the headmaster aimed it so he could defend himself. With a slight smile, the headmaster seems pleased with the test results. Confused, he looks around, not understanding what's happening. Kneeling on the ground, he prepares for the headmaster's next move. The headmaster asks if he's already out of spells and says he was just testing him. With a smile, the headmaster lands, and the boy asks what his goal was. He wanted him to experience the reality of being targeted for his talent. With a serious look, he says he underestimated the boy's true potential. He then asks if he'll be a target for standing out so much at the academy. The headmaster confirms it, saying that extremists don't tolerate talented commoners. He remembers the attack he suffered when he was targeted by mysterious mages. They said they couldn't forgive his existence with so much talent. Approaching him, he asks the headmaster to tell him who the extremists are. With a shout, he demands to know who the people who attacked him are. The headmaster just stares at him in silence, not answering his question. He then says that knowing their identities would put him in greater danger. He advises him to focus on learning to protect himself at the academy. With a determined look, he thinks about the power he needs to protect himself. He remembers that if the headmaster were an enemy, he'd already be dead. Closing his eyes, he seems frustrated with his own weakness right now. Turning to the headmaster, he gets ready to ask another question. He then asks what the pendant he's wearing around his neck is. The headmaster stares at him, looking a bit surprised by his question. He then asks if there's something wrong with the proof of a magic saint. Shocked, he understands that this is a title of the highest rank. magic. That title was the mage's equivalent of the sword saint. The headmaster then says he's going to give him something and tosses a coin. Holding the coin, he wonders if it's some kind of badge. The headmaster warns him not to lose it, as it will be useful soon. Watching the headmaster leave, he's impressed by the power he displayed. He thinks that there isn't the slightest disturbance in the headmaster's mana. Holding the badge, he says he can't just stand there being impressed. He thought that just learning magic would be enough in his new life. But remembering his death, he knows he needs far more power. With a clenched fist, he understands he needs to become much stronger. He says he needs to surpass the man he was as the Sword Saint. In a room, 2 students comment that he was the first to arrive. They also say he hit every target during the exam. The noble says that's ridiculous and that he'll be eliminated soon. A man then enters the room, approaching the students who were there. Stepping forward, he prepares to make an important announcement. Seated, the noble just watches him with a look of pure contempt. Surprised, the noble stares at him with a shocked expression on his face. Entering the room, he walks toward his seat among the other students. In disbelief, the noble wonders how that guy managed to get here. He then questions what could have happened to the commoner boy. Talking with the mage, he says he needs to focus on gaining power to protect himself. Sitting with his eyes closed, he begins to concentrate on his power training. By repeating the process, he understands that discharging power increases his mana pool. Opening his eyes, he now stares at the horizon with a much more determined look. Standing in his room, he continues to look outside through the large window. Looking at his hand, he says he wants to gain more combat experience now. Suddenly, while sitting on the floor, he turns around in surprise as he notices something. Walking towards the door, he remarks that this is the first time this has happened. Adjusting his gloves, he states that this is the first time he's ever wanted to become stronger. Arriving at the location, he faces a group of 3 guys looking down on him. Seeing him there, the white-haired guy scoffs, saying, "That guy!" The guy then wonders what could have happened to our protagonist. Around them, other students also seem quite surprised by his sudden appearance. Noticing his rival there, his gaze finds someone else among the students. His eyes focus on a girl with glasses, and he wonders who she is. As she sat reading, a bookmark fell to the floor beside her. Bending down, he quickly picks up the bookmark before anyone can step on it. Walking up to the girl, he asks if that bookmark belongs to her. Holding out his hand, he returns the object she had dropped. With a smile on her face, she thanks him profusely for returning it. Observing her reaction, he comments that she seems to really like flowers. Confused by his words, the girl just stares at him, not understanding the comment. Introducing himself as Oscar, he asks to sit next to her, whose name is Lily. Just then, a voice emerges, and he looks up, paying attention. The other students look around, wondering whose voice that was. Coming from a nearby table, the voice seemed to be coming from inside a book. Suddenly, the book's pages begin to fly all over the room. Startled, all the students, including his rival, watch the pages fly around. Then a woman appears and introduces herself as Ruth, the person in charge of the class. Recognizing the woman, he remarks that she's the teacher from the first class exam. The teacher announces that next week they will participate in combat classes. Hearing about the field training, he becomes visibly much more excited. With his fist on the table, he can hardly believe he'll be gaining combat experience so soon. To balance the groups, she says they will form teams of 5. Confused, the students ask if combat strength is their magical power. Wagging her finger, she explains that the measurement will be their total body mana. Next to the girl, he continues to pay close attention to all the instructions. With a smile, the teacher prepares to begin the measurement procedure. She then informs them that she has finished measuring every student's capacity. Suddenly, the students notice spheres of light appearing above their heads. The girl beside him is also surprised by the sphere that appeared above her. With her back turned, the teacher tells them to look at the light intensity of each sphere. A large sphere appears above his rival, impressing a classmate standing nearby. Another student with a serious expression also has a sphere of equal intensity. Sitting in a relaxed manner, another boy smiles for also having a powerful sphere. Observing the students, the teacher says there are several talented mages in the class. Above his head, a small sphere of mana appears, leaving him very confused. Mocking him, other students say that no one will want to team up with him. Ignoring the comments, he thinks that now is not the time to worry about that. Just then, a hand touches his shoulder, making him turn around suddenly. It was the girl from before, who invites him to join her group. He asks if she's sure, and she says that anyone who loves flowers is a good person. But she warns him that first, she'll need to ask someone named Levin. Not understanding at all, he wonders who this Levin person could be. Sitting down, the red-haired guy asks if she wants to put that guy in their group. Facing the guy, he says confidently that he would very much like to join the group. The two then stare at each other, while the redhead seems to be analyzing the whole situation. Resting his hand on the table, he says it is a noble's duty to protect the weak. He then agrees, saying he'll let him join as a baggage carrier. After the conversation, the students begin to gather to form their groups. One of the students turns and glares at the two of them with a look of contempt. Walking beside him, the girl notices the other student stares. She tells him not to be bothered, saying the difference between them is natural. As they walk, he says it's okay and thanks her for letting him join the group. Answering one of her questions, he says he's been studying magic for about half a year. Stopping, the two of them continue talking about his training. With a surprised expression, she asks if he's really only been studying for half a year. He then turns to her, a bit confused by her reaction. Walking down the hallway, the teacher leaves the students after giving them instructions. Just then, the white-haired boy calls out to her, saying Professor Ruth's name. Turning to the student, she asks if something is wrong. He then questions why that commoner is in the academy's first class. Continuing his complaint, he says the boy has no mana or power whatsoever. With a clenched fist, he states that an amateur won't be able to keep up with them. With a smile, the teacher asks if he's referring to young Oscar. Staring intently at the boy, she begins to share an important fact about him. She reveals that it's only been 6 months since he awakened his mana, shocking his rival. Stating he has great potential, she says he might soon surpass him. Turning her back, she continues to explain her point of view on the matter. She concludes by saying that the field training is meant to weed out the weakest. The scene changes, and the classroom now appears completely empty. A pyramid chart shows that nobles are born with a high power level. Hearing the explanation, he simply says he understands the situation. He then says it's impressive for someone to reach that mana level at his age. Very excited, the girl says that he's actually the incredible one in this story. Grabbing him, she shouts that it's unheard of for someone to reach that level in just 6 months. Remembering his master, he says his training must have been very good. Taking the opportunity, he asks what her exact relationship with Levin is. With a smile, she explains that Levin's family is a prestigious noble house. His family is so important that the others follow him in exchange for protection. She continues, saying that Levin is skilled and will protect the group when needed. Beside her, he seems a little worried about the idea of being protected. Changing scenes to the forest, the students gather for the start of their field training. In front of everyone, the teacher says she will explain the rules of the activity. She informs them their task is to survive one night in a forest filled with monsters. Hearing the rules, he reflects that this is another practical task right after the exam. Showing a scroll, she says it contains a barrier and a flare. One of the students scoffs that it'll be easy, they just have to use the paper. She warns, however, that any group using the paper will be demoted from the first class. Hearing the new rule, all the students are completely shocked and terrified. Noticing the tension, he realizes how important it is for everyone to stay in the first class. The red-haired boy then says that as long as he's around, quitting is out of the question. With a confident smile, he promises to protect everyone during the test. The students then begin to organize, each joining their group. A very large camping backpack is thrown on the ground near the group. Pointing at the luggage, the redhead orders him to hurry up and carry the equipment. Beside him, the girl worries, but he says he'll be fine. Seeing him bend down, the redhead says he likes people who know their place. Carrying the backpack, he walks with the group as they enter the forest for the test. Suddenly, the group's leader trips and falls to the ground, startling his teammates. On the ground, he seems to be hurt, while the others just watch, unsure of what to do. Extending a hand to him, the protagonist asks if he can stand up. The boy just glares at the outstretched hand with an expression of pure rage. Rejecting the help, the redhead furiously yells at him to shut up and get away. Walking ahead, he turns to the girl and asks if she's okay. Watching the boy, he wonders how the other can remain so calm. As he keeps walking, he thinks that they haven't encountered any monsters along the way yet. Suddenly, his gaze focuses on something strange, noticing an anomaly in the forest. As they walk, the surrounding environment starts to look increasingly different. Shouting desperately, he warns everyone to stop and not take another step. Annoyed by the command, the redhead stomps his foot and asks who he thinks he is. With a serious expression, he senses something similar to his master's barrier. Just then, the group realizes they are trapped inside a huge magic circle. When a foot steps on the circle, the magic barrier begins to crack completely. Holding her staff, the girl looks up, surprised by what's happening. Shocked, the redhead asks what the hell is going on. Through a crack, his serious gaze carefully observes the dangerous situation. On the other side of the broken barrier, a hand holds a dagger, ready to strike. Turning to the group, he tells everyone to prepare their staves for the imminent battle. With the barrier breaking, he tells everyone to get their staves ready for the fight. Looking up, the group notices the sky now looks completely different. Startled by the change, she asks if this is still the forest they were walking in. Just then, they find themselves facing enormous trees, in a place very different from before. On one of the trees, a marking with the number 5 reveals the location's identity. She then asks if it's possible they're in the 5th cemetery. One of the students shouts that this is a training ground for veterans. He then wonders if the magic circle was a trap set by someone. Recalling the situation, an image of 5 hooded figures comes to his mind. Facing the emergency, The protagonist suggests they use the magic paper to call for help. Holding the scroll in his hands, the redhead listens to his classmate's suggestion. Without hesitation, he starts ripping the paper with both hands in front of them. As he rips the paper, the redhead glares at the protagonist with a mocking look. He then smirks and says it was just a forgotten teleportation circle. Turning to the protagonist, he claims this is actually a great opportunity. He says that if he aces this training, the academy will give him an even better evaluation. As he walks ahead, the others comment that he's just what you'd expect from the Aldrit heir. The girl then asks Oscar to stay very close to her during the test. Walking with the group, he seems a bit tired of the whole situation. Suddenly, he stops and looks ahead with an expression of complete surprise. In the darkness, several pairs of eyes watch the approaching group. A three-eyed wolf with sharp teeth stares at the students, growling at them. With a smile on his face, the redhead says they've finally shown up to fight. Holding his weapon, he prepares for the battle that's about to begin. He thinks this is a unique chance to gain real combat experience. The redhead stops him, asking what he thinks he's doing getting so close. He then says he'll show them how a true noble really fights. Not understanding the comment, he wonders about the way a noble fights. One of the wolf's paws hits the ground, revealing its sharp claws. Preparing for the attack, the redhead faces a wolf charging in his direction. Wielding his wooden weapon, he readies himself for battle against the creatures. With a smile on his face, he raises the weapon high to attack the wolves. Slamming the weapon on the ground, he creates a barrier to protect the whole group. From the ground, a rock barrier begins to rise in front of the students. The barrier hits the wolves, throwing the creatures away from the group of students. Shouting to his classmates, he tells everyone to attack the monsters now. At that, one of the guys launches a blast of wind toward the creatures. Right after, the other classmate also fires a jet of water at the targets. Passing through the barrier, the two attacks score a direct hit on one of the forest wolves. They divide the tasks, protecting themselves while attacking the monsters at the same time. Watching the fight, he finally understands that this is how a mage fights. Seeing the monsters, the redhead realizes there are too many of them for the group to handle. Suddenly, an attack breaks through the barrier and hits one of the students head-on. Thrown a great distance, the young man can't defend himself from the powerful surprise attack. Just then, a wolf appears behind the girl, who freezes completely. Annoyed, the redhead turns back to the battle, noticing the dangerous situation. Before the girl, a giant wolf appears, preparing for the imminent attack. Leaping over the rocks, the wolf lunges ferociously at the student. Seeing the danger, he prepares a fire spell to save his classmate. Casting the spell, he hits the wolf and pulls the girl away from the attack. Hit head-on, the wolf falls to the ground, completely defeated by the blow. Pulling the girl behind him, he protects her from danger, stepping in front. She thanks him for saving her life, and he says the fight is over. With the wolves defeated on the ground, the group finally gets a moment of peace. As night falls, they all rest around a campfire in the forest. The redhead says he's lucky to see a noble fight up close. He replies that it was a magnificent combination of defensive magic. Being praised, the redhead seems a little embarrassed by the comment. He then reflects that he desires an individual strength that surpasses their power. Thoughtfully, he wonders if he should just keep training as he always has. As he sits in the forest, the girl calls out to him and approaches. With a smile, she offers him 2 mugs so they can talk. She says she's the one who ended up needing protection, and he thanks her for her help. He then asks about the difference in strength of the defensive magic she used. Remembering the wolf's attack, he continues his questioning about the magic. The redhead explains that magic is stronger the closer it is to the caster. Mocking him, he says that commoners are all like that and don't understand magic. The girl then explains that magic returns to nature the farther away it gets. Hearing the explanation, he finally understands the logic behind using magic. He reflects that if the formula and the mana are the same, there must be a way. Drinking from the mug, he wonders if there isn't a way to increase its effectiveness. Laughing, the girl says it seems she made the drink a bit too thick. He just smiles back, while continuing to think about magical power. At that moment, his gaze focuses on something, as if he's had a new idea. Observing the drink, he says he finally understands what he needs to do. Seeing him lost in thought, the girl calls his name, a little worried about him. Looking at the mug, he thinks about increasing the power that fills the container. He then wonders if this idea isn't similar to the Ki sword. Meanwhile, a man watches the group through a surveillance spell. Holding a whip, he comments on the heir of the renowned Aldrit family. Stepping on a magic circle, he seems to be preparing for some action. With a serious look, he says he'd prefer that person to stay quiet for now. Behind him, a huge, shadowy creature emerges, awaiting his orders. At a campsite, a teacher observes a group of students who have given up on the test. Scared, the defeated students huddle together, awaiting the outcome. She reflects that the dropout rate was low, as the class is exceptional. Just then, another woman arrives and says it's time to switch. The new instructor introduces introduces herself as the teacher named Isabel. Seeing the newcomer, the students wonder if she is Isabel of Destiny. Watching a spell, she comments on how the students are doing in the test. She says the rivals group is doing very well, as expected from the first class. In another part of the forest, a student reads while sitting on top of a defeated creature. Asking about Oscar, the other teacher says his group's signal has disappeared. Looking at the location, she finds it strange, as they were there just a moment ago. Back in the forest, his group continues to rest around the fire. The other team members also take advantage of the free time to relax. One of the guys gets up and starts practicing with his wand near the woods. Holding his mug, the protagonist remains thoughtful, watching the campfire. Remembering the key sword, he thinks about how swordsmen use that technique. He then wonders if it would be possible to do the same thing using his mana. Suddenly, he hears a noise and looks startled toward the forest. Two of his classmates run out of the woods, screaming for everyone to run. The redhead then asks if more weaklings are showing up for the fight. Suddenly, a huge pillar of fire erupts in front of the whole group. Noticing the explosion, the redhead wonders what just happened. As the flames dissipate, a figure begins to emerge from the darkness. With sharp claws, the paw of an enormous creature steps onto the forest floor. Emerging from the shadows, a giant dragon appears, facing the entire group of students. Shocked by its appearance, the students wonder if that is really a dragon. With its mouth open, the creature lets out a roar that startles everyone there. The redhead says it's impossible for a dragon to be in a place like this. With a serious look, he realizes someone is targeting their group. Desperate, the students ask the redhead to use the paper, which he has already torn. Still in shock, the girl says it can't be, not believing the situation. With his weapon in hand, he says there's no choice but to fight. She then questions him, asking if he really wants to fight a dragon. His classmates say that with his defensive magic, they can withstand the attacks. He then realizes that if they resist, the teachers will notice something is wrong. Without hesitation, he raises his wooden weapon high to protect the group. Slamming the weapon into the ground, he summons an earth spirit shield. A huge stone wall rises, but only to protect himself. Screaming, his classmates ask what he's doing, leaving them behind. He then yells that he will survive, even if he's the only one. In disbelief, the guys remember he said he would protect everyone. One of them says there's nowhere to run, as the dragon has its eyes on them. Holding her staff, she gets ready and says they need to fight to live. With a magic circle, she casts an earth spell toward the dragon. After the attack, the students look at the smoke and wonder if they hit it. Emerging from the smoke, the dragon appears to have taken no damage from the blow. One of the students says the attack didn't work because it wasn't advanced magic. She then yells that she'll draw the monster's attention, telling Oscar to run. Not knowing what to do, she turns and faces the protagonist, waiting for an answer. With a serious look, he stares back at her, seemingly with a plan in mind. The dragon then fires 2 energy blasts at the terrified students. Desperate, one of them screams that he doesn't want to die, thinking all is lost. With its mouth open, the dragon begins to prepare a new, powerful attack. He then turns to the girl, who looks at him, confused by his attitude. She realizes the dragon is absorbing mana from the environment as energy. He reflects that despite its power, this is the monster's only ability. Concentrating his power, he prepares to use one of his new abilities. Wielding his dagger, he says he'll test which of them is superior. Facing the dragon, he braces for the creature's powerful strike. Focusing on refining his power, he prepares to use a new ability. Unleashing its attack, the dragon creates a huge energy blast. Behind a barrier, the other students watch the scene in terror. Shielding the girl with his body, he pulls her away from the imminent danger. Launching a powerful blow, he fires a pillar of energy at the monster. Striking the dragon's mouth, the blow interrupts the monster's attack. With immense force, the strike pierces through the dragon's body, causing massive damage. Thrown back, the dragon falls as the others watch the scene unfold. On the ground, the girl stares at the battle's outcome, completely stunned. Standing in the clearing, he seriously observes the result of his attack. Shifting to another location, the scene focuses on the dark, starry night sky. Seeing the defeat, the man scoffs that it's a joke for a freshman to beat his chimera. Completely bewildered, he wonders what kind of power was used in that battle. Looking back, he wonders if anyone managed to sense his presence. With a hateful glare, he vows to ensure the boy is eliminated. He then declares that only those of noble blood can wield such power. Back in the forest, the protagonist observes the outcome of his great battle. With a smile on his face, he celebrates that his new plan worked. Clenching his fist, he can hardly believe his new ability actually succeeded. He then reflects that this is a theory only a former swordsman could have devised. On the ground, the dragon appears to be completely defeated after the blow. The students watch, wondering if they've finally managed to defeat the creature. Behind a barrier, they observe the scene, still a bit frightened. Behind his wall, the red-haired boy says the whole situation is ridiculous. He then realizes a commoner protected him, leaving him completely speechless. Holding her staff, The girl wonders what kind of power that was. Suddenly, his legs give out, and he starts to lose his balance. Shouting his name, she rushes to help him as she sees him falling. Sitting on the ground, he says he's fine, just a little tired. He then reflects that using his power comes at a price, feeling his body ache. Suddenly, the group hears a noise and looks toward the forest. Startled, the girl wonders if something else is coming to attack them. From the middle of the woods, a giant stone figure emerges before the group. Just then, the professor says she found traces of a teleport and came to investigate. With a smile, she asks the students if they are all okay. Still in shock, all the students stare at the professor, speechless. He then shouts the master's name, surprised to see her there in the forest. His body exhausted, he can no longer stay on his feet. Falling to the ground, he collapses completely in front of his classmates. Seeing the defeated dragon, she approaches the creature's body to analyze it. She then says she'll hear everyone's story when they get back. Seeing him passed out, the students gather around to try and wake him. From a distance, the red-haired boy watches the scene, still processing everything that happened. Climbing a rock, the professor gazes at the horizon, pondering the incident. As the sun rises, the professor watches the horizon, bringing the night to a close. Back at the academy, the scene shows the institution's imposing building. In the director's office, he talks with the mage about the recent events. The director says he can't believe something like this happened at the academy. Listening to the report, he faces the director, waiting for his words. With a grim look, the director says the academy has been infiltrated by villains. Hearing the director's words, he is shocked by the revelation. The director praises him, saying he did well to survive the attack. He then says it only happened because he decided to become stronger. Hearing the young man, the director seems a bit thoughtful about the whole situation. Looking out the window, he says he needs to tell him something very cruel. Outside, other students seem to be having fun, unaware of the danger. Calling him by name, the director prepares to deliver his news. He then informs him that he must leave the academy and live without magic. Shocked by the order, he stares at the director, unable to believe what he just heard. Remembering his past, he reflects on his former title as a knight. He then wonders if he'll have to live a life without magic now. With a serious look, he continues to recall his past achievements. A man used to tell him that magic isn't everything and that there are other joys in life. He would then train with his sword, thinking he shouldn't just throw it all away. Remembering his friends, he seems to find a new will to keep fighting. With a serious face, he says no, that he cannot accept this order. Sitting in the office, he faces the director, with an expression of pure determination. He then shouts that after coming this far, he can't just give up. Surprised by the reaction, the director asks what it was that he just said. With a smile, he says he appreciates the director's concern for him. He concludes by saying that if the target is inside the academy, he has an idea. Curious, the director asks the young man about his grand idea. Puffing out his chest, he says he'll act as bait for the enemies. Hearing the bold plan, the director is shocked by the young man's courage. He then asks if the boy isn't afraid of dying in the process. With a smile, he replies that he has no intention of getting caught. The director then starts to laugh, surprised by the student's confidence. Letting out a hearty laugh, he seems to really like the young man's attitude. He then says that in that case, he'll match his resolve. Extending his hand, the director prepares to seal the deal with him. With a smile on his face, he shakes the director's hand, closing the deal. The director says that before he fights, he needs a new staff. Confused, he looks at his weapon, which he used in the last battle. That's when he notices the staff is broken and now unusable. Cutting to the library, the scene shows the place where he will train. There, the director hands him a new staff to use on his mission. The professor says the staff is for beginners, but perfect for him at the moment. He then asks if a staff is really necessary to use his abilities. She explains that it's hard to write with your finger, and the same goes for magic. If mana is the ink, she says, then the staff is the writing tool. He then remembers a time when he admired the other students' staffs. Looking at his broken weapon, he wonders what could have happened. He then wonders if the staff couldn't handle his refined mana. Called by the girl, he turns to find her waiting for him. With a smile, she greets him, happy to see him there with her. He apologizes for interrupting her day off with his errands. Placing a hand on her chest, she tells them to just go and buy the staff. Arriving at the shop, he's impressed by the variety of staffs for sale. The shopkeeper says they pride themselves on the store's large selection of items. Showing a rare piece, a man praises the quality of the staff's gems. Beside him, the girl is startled when she sees the item's price. Shocked by the price, he sees that the staff costs 1 million coins. Fleeing from shopkeepers, they seem to have gone through several different stores. In another shop, they run from a rather scary-looking seller. After much searching, they rest in a plaza in the middle of the city. Sitting on a bench, he says he can't afford those expensive staffs. She then explains that since many mages are nobles, they focus on appearance. He says he'll search alone so as not to take up any more of her time. Annoyed, She yells that she's staying with him until the end. Just then, they spot a shop with a staff sign out front. Seeing the place, she says it looks like they sell staffs there too. A man then warns them not to go into that shop under any circumstances. Another young man explains that the seller there pressures people into buying things. Looking at the sign, he reflects on things people don't want. Frightened by the warning, she pulls on his sleeve, afraid of the shopkeeper. She then begs him not to go into that place, no matter what. Ignoring the warnings, he opens the door and decides to enter the shop. He then says that if the shop is so bad, it should have gone out of business by now. Entering the place, he finds himself in a dark and very dusty environment. Behind him, the girl looks on, scared of what they might find. He then approaches a counter, observing the items for sale. A man then asks if he's a customer or just looking. Carving a piece of wood, the shopkeeper sits on a stool, looking intimidating. He then says that with so many staffs out there, the young man ended up in his shop. The protagonist just stares at the man, showing no reaction. Suddenly, the shopkeeper's gaze changes, as if he's noticed something. Pointing at the young man, he seems to have noticed something very strange. Yelling furiously, he throws a knife in his direction, startling everyone. He then says he has no intention of selling him a thing. Pointing at the young man, he yells that he has no staffs to sell to swordsmen. Hearing his words, he is surprised by the shopkeeper's reaction. Scared, she says she knew the place was dangerous and that they should leave. Rejecting her suggestion, he states that he's going to buy a staff right there. With a smile, he says that this shopkeeper has really piqued his interest. Surprised, the girl asks if he's really going to choose a staff from that shop. He then turns to the shopkeeper and asks what made him think that. Watching the young man closely, the shopkeeper begins to analyze every detail about him. He looks at the way the young man dresses and how he carries himself. Analyzing his hands, the shopkeeper continues to look for important clues. He also notices the way the young man steps on the floor as he moves. Pointing at the boy, he says his center of gravity is subtle. Remembering his past as a knight, he stares at the shopkeeper without saying a word. Behind him, the girl says that Oscar isn't a real swordsman. He then reflects that he didn't expect the shopkeeper to analyze him so quickly. Standing in the shop, he decides to tell the curious shopkeeper the truth. He reveals that he started learning magic half a year ago, leaving the man surprised. With a smile, the girl says he's a student at the Magic Academy. Thoughtfully, the shopkeeper asks why he's looking for a new staff. He then explains that the staff he was using broke during a fight. Handing over the broken weapon, he shows the staff's condition to the shopkeeper. Analyzing the object, the shopkeeper says it's completely useless now. He then explains that the internal magic circle was destroyed by an excess of mana. Not understanding, he asks what the shopkeeper means by that. The shopkeeper explains that larger staves can handle more mana, but they're harder to use. Holding the broken staff, he says the beginner's shape is more intuitive. Remembering his teachers, he notes that their staves are large and complex. He then asks what kind of staff the shopkeeper thinks would suit him. The shopkeeper replies that he hasn't decided if he'll sell one to him yet. Walking through the shop, he approaches the young man, who stares at him, confused. He then challenges him to choose the best staff in the entire shop. Pointing to the shelf, he says he'll sell it if he's satisfied with the choice. Looking at the options, he begins to analyze which staff he should choose. Behind him, the girl and the shopkeeper watch, awaiting his decision. She then reflects that a staff's value is determined by its materials. Suddenly, he reaches out his hand and seems to feel something in one of the staves. She wonders if that might be a rare staff, made from hagonome wood. Shocked by the item, she reflects that one of those is worth a year of luxury. With a hopeful look, she hopes that Oscar will notice that staff. He then turns, as if sensing a magical presence. Holding a simple staff, he says he has finally decided which one to take. He then shows a piece of wood, saying he'll take that one. The girl and the shopkeeper stare at him, shocked by his unusual choice. She then yells that the most expensive staff in the shop is the other one. He then explains that he wasn't asked to find an expensive staff, but a good one. With a serious look, the shopkeeper asks why he chose that staff. With a smile, he says it was just a feeling, that the staff felt warm. He then touches the shopkeeper with the staff, who looks at him with disdain. With the staff in hand, he says the object isn't broken. He concludes by saying that losing your equipment is the scariest thing. With a smile, he says that this is a good staff for its user. The shopkeeper stares at him, surprised by his precise analysis of the object. Suddenly, the man turns and looks at him with a surprised expression. He then asks if the shopkeeper will sell him the staff he chose. The shopkeeper reveals that staff was made for his son a long time ago. Confused, he asks why the staff is in the shop if it's not for sale. He then says that the staff's owner broke before the tool did. On the counter, a photo shows the shopkeeper next to his young son. Holding the staff, he says the object can't be called good. With his back turned, he seems to be dismissing the two from his dark shop. He says it's a shame same, but the girl comforts him, saying it will be okay. Suddenly, the shopkeeper asks where they think they're going now. Not understanding, he turns to the man, confused by his question. The shopkeeper tells him to wait, as he's going to get a staff that will suit him. Hearing the news, the two are overjoyed and celebrate. Relieved, she says she was very nervous, and he apologizes. Suddenly, the shop door opens, revealing a new figure. It was the same man who attacked them in the forest, surprising everyone. With a shocked look, he asks what they are doing there. Understanding nothing, the two just stare at the man, surprised by his appearance. Holding his whip, the man glares at the group with a menacing look. With wide eyes, the protagonist realizes the danger they're in. The girl then asks if the professor also came to the shop to buy a wand. He says yes, hiding his true intentions for being there. Just then, the shopkeeper calls out to the professor, seeming to already know him. Saying he seems busy, the professor says his goodbyes and leaves the shop. Leaving the shop, he walks down the street, away from the group of students. She then comments that he's already gone and wonders what he wanted. The shopkeeper says he's as restless as ever, showing disdain for the man. Handing him a new staff, he says this will be his new battle partner. Surprised, he stares at the staff, wondering what kind of weapon it is. Made of wood, the staff has an axe blade on its upper end. The shopkeeper explains that the staff was made from the legendary origin tree. This tree, which never dies, is on a very distant island nation. The tree's foliage remains radiant, with a canopy that is always green and alive. The girl shouts that wands from that tree are a treasure of immense value. With a smile, the shopkeeper says she's right. The item is very resilient. Still startled, she says a staff like that must be very expensive. The shopkeeper reveals the staff was meant for his son when he returned. With his back turned, he says that just like his son's wand, it is not for sale. Sitting on a bench, he shouts that he won't sell any other wands. He then explains that there isn't another wand in the shop suitable for him. Holding the staff, he prepares to accept the shopkeeper's gift. With a smile, he thanks him deeply for all the support and understanding. The shopkeeper then rushes him, telling him to try out the new staff right away. Holding the weapon, he prepares to test the power of his new equipment. With his eyes closed, he begins to concentrate to use his magic. Channeling his energy, he envelops the entire staff with his blue mana. The shopkeeper watches him with a serious look and a slight expression of surprise. He then says the feeling is strange, as if he's been using it for years. Shouting at them, the shopkeeper tells them to leave as he can't lose customers. Remembering the professor, he turns and decides to ask the man a question. He then asks if Professor Amon is a regular at this shop. Back at the academy, the students gather in the classroom for the next lesson. One of the students points, saying that's the group that went to the cemetery. They comment that it was a miracle the group returned in one piece from the incident. One of them reveals that Levin tried to save his own skin and abandon the others. Suddenly, the professor cracks his whip, startling the entire class. Annoyed, he yells at the students who apologize for talking. The professor then stares at the protagonist, who watches him in silence from his seat. He just stares back at the professor, showing no reaction to his gaze. The shopkeeper reveals that Amon was the captain of his son's squad. He also says that the professor was on the battlefield when his son died. In a flashback, the professor appears at the shop's door, talking to the shopkeeper. He concludes by saying it was Amon who brought the staff back. Holding the broken staff, he continues to listen to the shopkeeper's story. Shocked, the girl says she had no idea about the story behind the professor. Pointing at the young man, he says the professor was always kind to his son. Hearing the story, he looks at the man with a very serious expression. Holding the staff, he says the weapon was used heavily in battle. He then says his son must have been an exceptional mage. Surprised by the analysis, the shopkeeper asks how he knew that. Remembering the class, he sits down, ready to unmask the true culprit. He recalls that on the day of the training, Professor Amon was one of the instructors. With a look of hatred, he says there's no mistake in his suspicion. He then concludes that the professor is the mastermind behind the attack. He reflects that this is his chance, as the professor knows nothing. With a determined look, he says that this time he will be the one to strike first. In a dark room, the professor communicates with a mysterious entity. The entity says it admires the prowess he has shown on the battlefield. The professor replies that he is well aware of the expectations placed on him. The entity then asks if he found the school more treacherous than war. Answering no, he seems a bit uncomfortable with the question. He then promises to achieve military results without any further delay. After the conversation, he turns and leaves the room, thoughtful about the mission. Standing in the middle of the room, he reflects on the recent events. Back at the academy, the scene shows the imposing building of the institution. The director asks if it was Amon who attacked him during training. He says he finds it hard to believe the accusation against the professor. The director explains that the professor was a brave man who risked his life. The protagonist says that even so, he is sure he's not mistaken. The director says that if he claims so, it must be true, but he needs proof. With a smile, he says that's exactly why he is there. Surprised by the plan, the director listens carefully to every detail of the strategy. He says that just like in training, the professor will attack again. He concludes that if there's an opportunity, the enemy will strike without hesitation. Hearing the plan, the director becomes thoughtful about the next steps to take. He then reveals that there is an escort mission for the Imperial Princess. Princess Ariel was scheduled to enroll in the Academy's first class, but due to the side effects of a spell, she had to postpone her enrollment. Professor Ruth reveals that her enrollment was postponed for this reason. With a serious look, she says they must go receive Her Highness in the capital. The professor then reveals that this will be the mission assigned to all of them. While reading a book, one of the female students seems very interested in the mission. The protagonist's rival also listens to the instructions with great attention and seriousness. He then reflects that this is the perfect condition for Eamon to attack him. The professor turns to the class and asks if anyone has any questions. At that moment, the rival raises his hand and calls the professor ready to speak. With a serious look, he asks about the strength of the new class member. He questions if he can assume he has strength that rivals their own. Hearing the question, he stares at his rival with an expression of pure certainty. The professor says that, judging by the training, he has already surpassed them all. Shocked by the revelation, he stares at the professor, not believing what he heard. One of the female students, who was reading a book, also seems surprised by the news. He then says that the man he knew was mediocre and had no power at all. The protagonist just listens to the outburst, showing no reaction. The professor points out that, even so, several important people praise him highly. He says his grades were superior and that he doesn't understand the situation. With a look of anger, he says he finds it all incomprehensible. Pointing at the protagonist, he challenges him to a duel in front of everyone. He then demands that the boy show every drop of his power as a mage. The professor seems tired of the student's attitude, but doesn't interfere in the fight. She then reflects that with things as they are, she fears for the future of the mission. With a smile, the professor says the loser of the duel will be removed. Staring at his rival, he accepts the challenge, leaving the other boy shocked. In an arena, the two take their positions, ready for the duel to begin. Holding his staff, he wonders how things came to this. Suddenly, he notices something and looks startled at his opponent. The rival raises his wand and begins to summon an ice spell. Several magic ice circles appear around him as he stares back in surprise. Shouting, the rival tells him to prepare for the coming attack. He then reflects that he cannot be removed from the mission under any circumstances. Gripping his staff tightly, he prepares for the imminent battle. With a serious look, he concentrates, ready to use all his power. Shouting, he says he accepts the challenge from his rival, Zazan Gilotis.